Okay, great. Kibwe, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
Thank you. I wondered, okay, so you're the president of the, is it pronounced IKEMBA? IKEMBA
Yes,
Youth
IKEMBA.
Organization? Say
Yes,
again?
IKEMBA. IKEMBA.
IKEMBA.
Right.
Okay, perfect. I hadn't heard about it, and I learned about it really through Thomas. And I just wondered, for people in the diaspora, can you talk to us a little bit about what the organization does, and also what I know you're also involved in pushing the discussion about reparations forward. So if you
Right.
could tell us something about that as well.
All right. Now, IKEMBA is the first youth reparation organization in the Caribbean. It was actually formed in 2017 on 26th of November. It was inspired, of course, by, the continuous call for young people to get involved in the whole discussion of reparations. And more than just the discussion, but of course, we understand that around the world, young people have always been the drivers of any movement. So getting young people involved, of course, would, of course, accelerate the movement itself. So a group of young activists were pulled together. This was at CARICOM Secretariat under the leadership of Dr. Hilary Brown, who's a program manager for human and social development, and of course, Eric Clips, who's the chairman of the Guyana Reparations Committee. And we were pulled together to have a 2-day workshop on how we can, of course, deal with the messaging of reparations. Because we know reparations is something that's been it's a fight that's been constant for years. But only in 2017, we now have young people that actually have an organization that deals with it. So it says a lot about the gap of information, because even to the young persons who now lead this organization, at one point we were not as knowledgeable as we should have been. Well, yes, you could debate what should and what should be. So after that 2-day workshop, these young people, which myself included, I have some members who are also on this call, Nika Frank, who's the vice president, and Kemi Beaton, second vice president. I also have Sully Kalimore. I'm not too sure exactly who else is on the call right now. But we came together and said, you know what, instead of just giving our involvement and giving our ideas, which will be sent to some secretary, to some office to be analyzed, why not form this organization? Of course, under the leadership and the blessings of Dr. Brown and Eric Phillips, form this organization that will actually champion the cause reparations the youthful way. So we started then. We had elections, I was voted in president and so forth, and we moved from there. And of course, one of the things that we would understand, one of the things that we would have looked at very seriously is that reparations is something that is big. It is something that deals with a very, people would call a controversial issue, but it's something that is very fundamental for people of African descent. But most of the language and most of what you can read or find, whether online or even from speeches that has been recorded, etc., are of academic nature. And we understand that the vast majority of the people in the world are not so, I'm not saying that people are what should I say, are illiterate, but we must come to the realization that the way and how people take in information today is totally different from how we would have done in the past. So people are more compelled by short videos and by memes and by certain things that they can captivate it very shortly. And I also have this personal belief about setting seeds than giving somebody a whole long book. So we understand that a lot of what is being said about reparations, even the word itself, the meaning, or even just hearing the word reparations is completely foreign to a lot of young people and even to senior folks. And when people hear about the word reparations, the first thing comes to mind is money. It's about African people asking white people to pay them some money for some debt is owed to them because of slavery, which is gone so many years ago. Why talk about it now? We have more problems like crime and blah, blah, blah. So we are now in a position to try to narrate the complex language, the in-depth columns of articles and long 1 hour to 2 hour video clips of speeches, etc., and to package it that young people, and for people who are not even young, who may have a short attention span, can understand what this issue is all about and how they play a part of it. I believe one of the most important things to getting people involved into any movement or to get be interested in anything is to understand how they play a part, how it affects them. When we hear about, COVID-19, COVID-19 is a big deal around the world. We all get scared. Some people are very reckless until one of their family members die from COVID-19. They put on a mask, they're far more careful, they spray in the house with Lysol all the time because then there's a personal connection to COVID-19, or your mother died, your sister would have passed away, your close friend, then you start to feel like, you know what? If this person so close to me can be affected so much, then it's possible that I can be affected as well. So our aim is, of course, to make that link between what happened in that period of 400 years of enslavement, for example, in Guyana, 215 years, and link it to what is happening to us today. We talk about the legacy of slavery. Legacy of slavery speaks of the legacy that of that time that affects us today. Incarceration, diabetes, hypertension, African people being prone to it. We talk about the opportunities for higher learning, education. We talk about business. Films talk about the structure in Guyana that, of course, favors some ethnic backgrounds more than some. So there's clear, not only in Guyana, but across the Caribbean, across the world, that there are several disparities between people who are white, people who are African, and all the other ethnic backgrounds. So we're in a position now to try to simplify it. Because when people hear these long titles, they ask, what really does it mean? Not everybody has the time. And it's not about, they had this conversation about what should matter and what should not. And me coming to somebody and saying, you know what, reparations is something that matters to you because you're an African person. You should be concerned about what happened to your parents and what is happening to you now. That doesn't mean that they should. So instead of taking that approach of telling them what they should be in charge or what they should want to know about, we try to find ways to set the seeds to spark their own curiosity, because that's the best way to teach anybody anything. I'm not going to force reparations down to anybody. I'm going to give them some facts. I'm going to try to link it to what they're personally dealing with in life for them to understand how important reparations is. Thomas' book would have done is an act of reparations. And you asked Mr. Phillips a question about, do you think that when we're going to actually receive reparations? It's my personal belief that reparations is an ongoing thing. Of course, the biggest thing, of course, is when Europe admits, which is the first point in the 10-point CARICOM reparation 10-point plan, a full and formal apology. They accept that they committed a crime and that it ought to be a crime, as they would have said. And after that acknowledgement, they would then find ways, of course, of giving reparations. I'm grateful for things like HR 40, which is putting together a commission to understand the reparations and how we can actually come to either a total or ways of actually giving reparations. But I'm also thankful for like this by Thomas Harden, White Debt, which is helping to give people a view of what actually happened. And also coming from somebody who's white, of course, this was always a big issue for Thomas, a white man telling a story of African people. And it has been a problem for many African people around the world. Why does the white man tell our story? We should be telling our story. And we have to understand that, of course, as much as we tell our story, a lot of people are not listening to us. But even as much as they might not like this book, they're going to look at it because why would he write such a book? And for some, they would agree. Now, one of the points I want to touch when it comes to this book, and a white guy, of course, writing a book like this, when I was in South Africa in 2018, at the Reparations, Reconciliation, and Recognition Conference, there was a particular session whereby a woman would have showed a clip of African people being burnt in tires. We're talking about the apartheid era. And after that clip showing the atrocity that African people would have faced, the clip changed to a white woman in a bathtub who was devastated and went into, into depression of what she would have witnessed. Now, the whole scenario, the whole focus was shifted from African people who were burnt, didn't make any mention of their families, and was shifted to that white woman and what she had to live with, witnessing such crimes. At that time, myself, my friend Anna, Howie, and Ziara, we would have stand up and we left that room immediately, because that is what has been happening across the world. Even when you type in reparations, what is reparations? Sometimes in YouTube, the first might pop up. I remember when I did this once, it was a black guy being interviewed by a white guy. And when he was asking the black guy about reparations, he was saying that slavery was something that African people had to deal with because of whatever they would have done in the past. It's their way of repenting and something concerning in the Christian language. So when you see a white person can put together a book that tells the story, that helps to tell the story from a black perspective, and of course his own perspective, because that same thing that Alyssa said, trust me, I loved your presentation, Alyssa. When it comes to his story, history is our story. Most times when we think about slavery, the first thing comes to mind, African people's history. But we all had a part to play in it. African people or white people. We were enslaved, and the white people were the enslavers. So history is our history. I don't know if I'm babbling up too much because something could go on and on. I don't know if you have any pertinent questions you want to ask. So I'm just going to pause there.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on what you and Alyssa has spoken about in terms of Thomas being the author of the book, because what I thought was what it struck me was that Thomas does have access to publishers that we don't necessarily have. But I felt he had used that privilege in order to provide voices, our voices, because actually the whole way through the book, we're being constantly reminded that Thomas has gone to Guyana, he's met this person's telling him X, Y, and Z. So I actually felt in a way that this was, I mean, to me, it's just an amazing example to other people about what's possible. You know, if you are a white person and one of the things you are worried about and concerned about, you know, is the serious question as to why are you writing about Black history, was just the wonderfully transparent way that actually Thomas demonstrated that, okay, he may be the author on the spine, but actually he did it with all of these other Black people, all of these people from Guyana who helped, and therefore used his privilege to help give us all a voice. And I actually found that really, I thought that was really powerful and the best that anybody could have done in his position. So yeah, I just wanted to pick up on what you were saying about that, because I understand where you're coming from, but I also just thought it was a genius way of doing it, basically.
Correct, and that's on that same point, I totally agree with you. Yeah. You know, he of course is the author, and we understand the leverage he has as being an author who's been recognized, and of course he has the access to the publishers, which we might not have access to. And why I say this is an act of reparation, for example, my organization is one of the first youth reparations in the Caribbean. You yourself said it yourself. You did not know about this organization, right? Even this organization has been doing a lot of things from 2017 to now, and I could go to a whole long list. But because of this book, you're now privy to it. So that is putting this movement on a different level of, a different level of spotlight. And where I was added to the book in his postscript, there's a part in the book which I'll just quickly read when he said, "Therefore, I agree with Kibwe. Reparations should be made to the descendants of those enslaved by the British. If we don't confront our history now, we'll just pass the burden onto the future generations. This is not about feeling guilty for what our ancestors did before we were born. It's about addressing the legacy of slavery that still impacts people today. Harm has been done, repair must be made." Now, that is Thomas actually pushing the movement of reparations. And he would have added my organization, IKEMBA. He would have added our work and what we've been doing. And that is publicity that I can't pay Thomas for, right? So this book, of course, is something historic. And we must commend Thomas. I've always been commending him since the day we met. And we had, you know, what I admire about him is that he didn't, as he explained, he's not somebody who just tried to do research. He wanted to come on the ground itself. He wanted to be among the people. He wanted to hear from persons who have been working on reparations for years. Some people might have heard about these names for the first time, but these people have been doing the work years and years over, not been getting that kind of recognition. Yes,